This is the terrifying story of the Screaming Stones of Petra. In today's video, we'll explore an ancient civilization lost to time discover, why thousands of visitors go missing at this UNESCO World Heritage Site every year, and learn how the Jordanian government has been desperately trying to cover up the truth behind these mysterious disappearances, and became one of the world's richest cities due to its location along important trade routes. Known as the Rose City because of the color of its stone, Petra is famous for its many temples, tombs, and other structures that were literally carved into the cliffs. Legend has it that whenever the sun sets, the stones come alive. They begin to shake and make sounds similar to humans trapped inside the rocks, screaming and trying to escape, as if the cliffs themselves are reliving the bloodshed of some horrible massacre from their past. But they found nothing out of the ordinary. Just before sunset, they found a cave at the end of the canyon that appeared to be the source of the strange noise. The temperature suddenly dropped, and the rocks started to vibrate. The entrance was gone, swallowed by the earth as if it had never been there at all. The geologists quickly regrouped. They knew they needed to get out of the canyon before nightfall, but one of them had gotten separated, and they couldn't leave without him. High-pitched screams echoed through the canyon. The scientists ran for their lives, tripping over one another in their haste to get away. He was lying on the ground unconscious, babbling in a language that wasn't his own. As darkness fell, the screams in the canyon grew louder and more frequent. It sounded like hundreds of people being slaughtered. Their equipment started picking up a rhythmic tapping sound coming from within the rocks. It was slow and deliberate, almost like someone was trying to send them a message by knocking on the inside of the cliff. They claimed that the scientists had made the whole thing up to get attention, and even went so far as to plant a story in the local news, accusing the lead geologist of stealing artifacts from the site. You see, long ago, the Nabateans were forced to abandon their homeland after the Roman Empire seized control of the region. Before they left, they placed a curse on the land, which would cause anyone who tried to steal from Petra or disturb the spirits of the dead to lose their mind and become trapped there forever. Faced with these false accusations, the scientists had no choice but to drop their investigation and flee the country. But the truth is, there are too many missing persons cases and stories of people being driven insane for us to just ignore. When they tried to wake him up, his eyes rolled in his head, and he started growling like a wild animal. We began to hear screams echoing around us, and the hair on our arms stood on end. That's when we noticed small pebbles flying through the air, seemingly from nowhere. As they drove away, they looked back at the canyon and saw what appeared to be hundreds of shadowy figures running around on top of the cliffs. Darkness had fallen, and we were trapped in the cursed zone. Then we started hearing footsteps behind us. We ran for our lives, stumbling over rocks and tripping on uneven terrain. We could hear the footsteps getting closer and closer behind us. We turned to look and saw hundreds of shadowy figures running toward us. But as we turned to go, we saw something that made our blood run cold. But it wasn't a voice we recognized. It was the voice of the missing geologist who had been trapped inside Petra for 10 years. We could feel the heat emanating from within the rocks and hear screams of people being tortured. Inside, the walls were covered with small holes which were made by previous explorers trying to chisel their way out. At first, we didn't believe him, but then we started hearing the same sounds ourselves. The government was desperate to protect the reputation of Petra, which is Jordan's biggest tourist attraction. We ran as hard as we could until we reached it and then collapsed on the ground, exhausted and terrified. Come back. This leads us to believe that there really is some kind of supernatural force at work here. We hired a guide who took us deep into the forbidden areas where no tourists are allowed. Or if you're feeling brave, you can test your luck and enter the forbidden zone yourself. But if you do, be careful. You may not come back. Our guide told us about a young girl who had been separated from her group and then vanished without a trace. Her name was Sarah. If word got out that people were going missing and scientists were losing their minds there, tourism would dry up and the country's economy would collapse. There really is a curse on the site, and it's causing people to go missing and even die. I never should have trusted the government or those so-called experts who said it was all just a hoax. Though most were completely destroyed in an earthquake in 363 AD, there are still many standing today. It all starts with this place, Petra. The ancient city was built by the Nabatean people over 2,000 years ago. And what happens in these areas is unknown to modern man. But despite the obvious wonder of this place, there are some parts of Petra that are closed off to the public. So there must have been another explanation. To find out what it was, a team of 5 scientists entered the sealed-off canyon. There was no mistaking what they were seeing. The next morning, they returned to the canyon to find that their equipment had been destroyed, and there was no trace of their colleague. Armed with cameras and audio recording equipment, they wanted to see if they could capture any proof of these unnatural sounds. In October of 2007, a group of geologists snuck into a forbidden area known as the Canyon of the Screening Stones to try and solve a mystery that had baffled explorers for centuries. Of course, we now know that there is no physical or scientific way for inanimate rocks to scream. As the day wore on, they explored the area and collected rock samples. Then as the sun began to set, something miraculous happened. When they turned back to look at the cave, they saw that it had disappeared. Going back toward the opening of the canyon, they finally spotted their missing colleague. They quickly dragged him back to safety, just in time to watch the last rays of sunlight fade below the horizon. And then something even more terrifying happened. In a panic, the scientists fled the scene, making a mad dash for their cars. At first, they thought it was their imaginations playing tricks on them, but then they realized that the shadows weren't moving with the wind. They reported what had happened to the authorities, but their story was dismissed as a hoax. So they did everything they could to discredit the geologists. But what really happened to them? Where is that missing geologist? And why does the government want us to believe that this is all just a hoax? In reality, the reason why so many people go missing at Petra every year is because of a curse placed on the site by an ancient tribe known as the Nabateans. The reason why the government doesn't want us to know this is because they do and want mass hysteria to break out and cause everyone to abandon the site. There are also reports of animals who go missing in the area, never returning and acting strangely when they do. After hearing this story, our team decided to visit Petra and investigate for ourselves. He also told us that he had heard strange noises while exploring the area and had seen shadowy figures running along the cliffs. As we walked through the canyon, we felt a sudden drop in temperature, and then the walls of the canyon started shaking. And then, just as suddenly, it all stopped. The sun was setting fast, and we knew we had to get out of there before dark. Right in front of us was the entrance to the cave that the scientists had discovered. But it wasn't just any cave. It was the mouth of hell itself. We tried to turn back, but it was too late. They were fast and silent, and we could hear their heavy breathing as they closed in on us. Then we saw a light in the distance and burst through the trees to find an opening in the canyon wall. As we lay there, catching our breath, we heard a voice calling our names from inside the stone. We knew then that we had been saved by a miracle and that we should never have entered the forbidden zone. What we discovered at Petra is beyond anything we could have imagined. If you're ever near Petra, stay away. Don't make the same mistake we did.